I know. You'll introduce it. Oh, actually, sorry. I'll introduce you. Okay. All right, everyone. I would like to introduce President Torres from the Doña Ana Community College, who will be introducing the center. Thank you so much for allowing us to be here.
Good evening. As she said, my name is Monica Torres, and I'm the Chancellor of the NMSU Community Colleges, which includes serving as the President of DACC. On behalf of the faculty, staff, and students of DACC, I welcome you to our East Mesa campus. Like so many of you on the stage and in the audience, at DACC, we are committed to improving the lives of New Mexicans. We do that through quality educational opportunities that support the development of knowledge and skills for New Mexicans to put to good use in their families, their neighborhoods, and their workplaces. This semester, we will serve over 8,000 people in our workforce training, adult education, transfer preparation, and small business development programs. As one of NMSU's community colleges, we are governed by the NMSU Board of Regents. One of the members, I believe, is with us tonight, Ricardo Gonzalez. But let me get on to the main task, and that is to introduce Senator Ben Ray Lujan. Senator Lujan grew up in Nambe, a small farming community north of Santa Fe, and it was there that he learned the values of New Mexico from his family and his community: hard work, dedication, and perseverance. Senator Lujan graduated from New Mexico Highlands University with a degree in business administration. And prior to his time in Congress, he served on the New Mexico Public Regulation Commission and the New Mexico Cultural Affairs Office. Senator Lujan has represented New Mexico in the United States Senate since January of 2021. Previously, he served as U.S. Representative for New Mexico's 3rd Congressional District. Since being elected to Congress, Senator Lujan has championed efforts to create good-paying jobs in New Mexico, to expand quality health care and protect patients with pre-existing conditions, to preserve our natural resources and sacred sites, and to build a clean energy economy, uplifting the middle class. Please join me in welcoming Senator Ben Ray Lujan.
Well, good evening, everybody. Can we give the president a round of applause and just say thank you, everybody? The work that President Torres does every day, I mean, it's absolutely incredible. And just truly the campus that you all built, just absolutely extraordinary. It's good to see some friends here. It's always like a reunion when you get together. And so Laura, thanks for sitting in the front row. It's good to see you guys. Our parents served together. I learned a lot from my father, my late dad. He sadly passed away about a little more than a decade ago. My father passed away due to a bout with lung cancer. There's a lot of work that I do in and around that space that I learned from my dad. Some of you I worked with, I had the honor of working with you through the last number of years on something called the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act, a piece of legislation that was critically important to so many families that got sick fighting cancer through no fault of their own, but because of where they lived. Because a bomb went off, a nuclear test, atmospheric test here with our neighbors in Tularosa. They were never warned about it. It went off. Some of the little kids, the stories that they shared with me is that they went outside to play because they thought it was snowing in Tularosa. And so they put swimsuits on and they went outside to play, but it was ash that was falling. People that were at work that day that maybe put some of their clothing out on a clothing line to dry up, by the time they got home, when they got home, it was full of ash. Some people their accounts of this was hearing just a large boom, a flash. Well, years later, they were diagnosed with chronic diseases. And then it got passed on generationally. While the United States government recognized that something bad happened in so many parts of America back in the 1990s, that they passed the original piece of legislation. And in it, they put something called downwinders. So if you were downwind of nuclear testing in that community and you proved that the health chronic condition that you were facing was related, then you could get some help. Well, the problem is that New Mexico was not included in any of these downwind communities. The first community in America where there was a nuclear atmospheric test was left out of downwind designation. When I was elected to the Congress, I asked a lot of questions as to why New Mexico was left out. No one had a good answer. No one had any answer. It was all politics. The folks in the room decided that some states were going to be included and some states were not. It was that simple. And New Mexico was left out. And so there's one of the leaders, Tina Cordova is her name. I met her and she was sharing with me what her and her family were going through. And I said, Tina, this just isn't right. What can we do? And she said, well, there's something you can do. You can get New Mexico included. And so I've been working for years trying to get help for so many of these families. And we're very blessed this year that that help finally reached families here in New Mexico. But other families in different parts of America that should have been included and covered were not. So the fight continues. The reason I share that with you is my dad was a welder. My dad's an iron worker. He was also a state representative, county commissioner. But my dad, he never smoked in his life. That's what all the doctors, they said, well, were you a smoker? Whenever I would go sit with him and my mom when he was getting his diagnosis. Well, it turned out that the work they had my dad doing, he was making molds at Los Alamos National Laboratory out of asbestos, and then they were filling them with lead. Two things that we shouldn't be near. And then there was another exposure where he was working, it was beryllium. Three really bad things. And so while my father would not have benefited from the work we did on the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act, I saw what he went through and I saw what my mom went through. He had a lot of life left in him and he had a lot that he wanted to get done. So it was very clear to me that we had to get this done for people all across New Mexico. These are families that they can't hire folks. They don't have those financial means. So their voice was not being heard, not being listened to. Another one of those injustices in America where we all know the importance of showing up, speaking truth to power. And when someone tells you, no, you can't do that or you can't change the law, you say, why not? I thought Congress wrote the laws. Of course we can make these changes. So to those in this room, and I saw a few heads nodding that are familiar with what this is, thank you for what you have done and for giving me the strength, the knowledge, and the courage to be able to stand up, do what's right, and get this one done. In the face of healthcare, as I travel around New Mexico now during this recess, and I want to thank everyone for showing up for this town hall. We've been hosting a few in different parts of New Mexico. I participated in one with Representative Stansberry in her district, and Representative Teresa Ledger Fernandez has been hosting. I recently had one up in Taos, New Mexico as well. And so I think it's real important that as elected members of the federal delegation that we show up and we answer questions, explain our votes, explain whatever may be going on, and have this conversation. So I want to thank you all for showing up here today. And all that I ask is that we respect each other. We may have difference of opinions in the room. That's okay. But let's be respectful of each other as we ask those questions, or there may be a position or something that may be stated. Let's be thoughtful because look, we're all New Mexicans. I invite passion. I'm a very passionate person. If some of you have seen me in some of these hearings, you've seen it yourself. I apologize for that. Um, the president, with her introduction, I'll get back to healthcare in a sec, and then we'll open it up to questions. She shared with everyone where I grew up in Nambe, New Mexico. Some of you may have traveled up to Nambe. It's about 25 miles north of Santa Fe. It's a small little farming community. I still live on the same farm that I was born and raised on. I live in the home that I'm in was once a one-room house, and it's grown a little bit. It was my great grandparents and grandparents and parents. And that's where I grew up, and I'm neighbors with my mom Carmen. And it's that little farm where, growing up, I didn't know that we didn't have money because there was always food because we raised it. We grew it in the garden. There were a couple of fruit trees out there. So sometimes you got something a little sweet. I used to get in trouble as a kid because I used to go climb my neighbor's apple tree before they were ripe, and I took a salt shaker. So if any of you like green apples, I know where to take you. We just need to make sure we put mattresses now, because now that I'm older and I fall, it hurts a lot more. But some of the lessons that I learned on that little farm growing up probably best prepared me for some of the back and forth that we see in Congress right now. What I mean by that is, are there any folks here that grew up on little farms, little rural communities? Any of you that just raised your hands, did you have any barns, raise animals? So you all will especially know what I'm talking about here. I often say that it's not the first layer when you're cleaning a barn that builds character. It's the second one. I'll leave it at that. I'm not going to explain anything else. But when you're going back and forth in a room and you just cannot comprehend the stench of whatever the policy is, I go back to that. Because the job had to get done. No matter how bad, how tough it was in that room, in that barn, you had to do the work that was required to make as positive a difference as you could. I'm going to go back to healthcare, then we're going to open this up to questions. And Anna or someone's going to explain how we're doing all of the tickets. So what we found is Representative Stansbury, she presented this idea where they pass out raffle tickets. So that way they try to make it as fair as possible so that people can ask as many questions as they can, and they'll pull tickets out and they'll call the number. So just make sure that you only answer when your number is called. Don't take someone else's ticket is all that we'll ask there. But look, with healthcare, some of you may know 3 years ago, I survived a stroke. And by the way, one of my jokes is this is what a stroke survivor looks like. I'm very blessed in my recovery. It's very rare. It's rare that you recover 100%. Any one of you that has loved ones that may have survived a stroke as well know that you get better, but then whatever's left is the rest of your life. Someone gave me a chance, faith, family, incredible neurologists, physicians, nurses. I got to know the folks that kept the room clean, that brought me my food. And by the way, they know everything that's going on in a hospital. So just remember that if you ever find yourself in that situation, I hope none of you do, but just be nice to everyone that's there around you, because they can make it tough or they can make it good. When you have a stroke, time is not on your side. If you can't go see a medical professional and get a scan and get an MRI, they don't know what may be happening to you. Because I was a little dizzy. With my stroke, I was able to have a conversation the whole time. I just had this splitting headache. And so they were monitoring me to say, like, well, what's going on with this guy? He's still talking to us. The scan says that there's some blockage or something happened. We see a little bit of fluid up in his head, but what's going on? Had it not been for me to be able to get an MRI and get that scan, and these physicians ultimately said, no, that liquid is accumulating, that fluid is accumulating, we need to get it out or it's going to cause damage that cannot be reversed. Time is not on your side. So what happens when federal dollars for Medicaid get cut? New Mexico, over half the population in our state, under Governor Susana Martinez, I appreciate that when she was governor, she chose to expand Medicaid in our state. Not a lot of Republican governors did this across America. And New Mexico became one of the most covered state as opposed to one of the most uncovered states. And when you needed help, you could go see a doctor, you could go get that care. So now with this bill that was just passed, they cut the federal dollars with Medicaid. And my colleagues that voted for this thing, I voted against it. My colleagues that voted for it said that they were not getting rid of Medicaid. They were just leaving it up to the state. If the states want to do this, then they'll do it. Well, at the same time, then they also cut food programs. So think about those food programs that we depend on, Meals on Wheels for some of our loved ones, or for some of our young kids as well that are in school. Think about all those meal programs that are out there. And by the way, did you know that grocery stores across America, about 11% of their revenue comes from Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program beneficiaries? So what happens to the most rural communities who have a little rural grocery store? All of a sudden, 11 to 15% of their revenue disappears. Those might close. Medicaid beneficiaries as well, going to rural clinics. The rural clinics that are furthest away from people are floated by those that are closer to people. Why do I say that? A lot of these rural clinics operate in the red. They're not making money. They're actually losing money. And it's those clinics that are closer to people where folks are going in through those doors, they're operating in the black. And so they have relationships and partnerships, and they'll float them. So what happens when most of that revenue also disappears? Rural health clinics right now could close. There's already been announcements in Oklahoma, in Nebraska. I'm leaving one out, Carlos. There's one other where they've already announced that this is going to be happening. I'm terrified as to what this means in New Mexico, because if rural health clinics start to close, then for the medical facilities in Las Cruces, in Albuquerque, in Santa Fe, arguably Espanola, there's going to be more pressure there. And there's already a shortage of physicians, as we all know, providers in New Mexico. So if there's more pressure on these other hospitals, which are already spread thin, then what happens if there's an emergency? Rather than getting you to a facility right here closer to family, they're going to try to find one out of state. But what happens if these rural clinics start closing, not just in New Mexico, but in Texas, in Arizona, in Colorado, in Oklahoma, in our neighbors? Then what? Time is not on our side. I do not understand why my colleagues who promised and professed, my Republican colleagues said time and time again that they would not put their hands on Medicaid. Even the president said that. Well, the proof is in the bill that they passed. Almost $1 trillion in cuts to this particular program. When my Republican colleagues in the Senate said they were going to cut the nutrition program, they said they were going to take $1 billion, which would have been devastating. They ultimately cut 230. If you know anyone that works in a food bank, or some of you may be here today, you know the devastation that it's caused. And you already know the need that exists today, which is sadly on par with where we were in COVID. It doesn't matter how well the stock market is doing or how these numbers are showing. In New Mexico, the economy is always tough. When we talk about issues that are going to make prices more expensive on the American people, my brothers and sisters here at home, we should be very concerned with cuts to programs that are going to make everything more expensive for all of us, even those of us that are fortunate to have health insurance. Because here's the other kicker. My colleagues that profess to be fiscally conservative and responsible added $4 trillion to the debt, while they eliminated $1 trillion to Medicaid and cut these food programs. You would think that they would have lowered the debt. That's not what happened. All the stuff that they did with these tax breaks. And by the way, if there's anyone here that makes $1 billion a year, makes more than $500,000 a year, the bill might help you a little. If you're one of the 0.1% top earners in the country, you're going to get a little bit more. And I congratulate my friends that have done well in their lives and that are making that amount of money. I hope they make more. I just don't think that they need a tax break. If we're going to have tax policy, why not put it to folks that are in the middle class, that are trying to get into the middle class or in that space? I mean, heck, some of my colleagues even said, let's do something that's going to be $400,000 and cheaper. If you make less than $400,000 a year, that's where the tax policy is going to go and it's going to point. If you're making more than that, there's not going to be additional tax cuts. There will not be. So when my colleagues added $4 trillion to the debt, they kicked something into place. Some of you may remember the word sequestration. It's this new, well, if I dare call it an economic policy that was put in place years ago when there was a budget back and forth to say if there was more dollars added to the debt, meaning Congress could not do its job and get these federal programs funded, then you have to go after Medicare, Social Security. This piece of legislation puts Medicare on the chopping block as well. And my colleagues will say they didn't do it. Well, when they added $4 trillion to the debt, they did. So Medicare beneficiaries, Medicaid beneficiaries, many constituents in New Mexico are both. Medicaid beneficiaries across New Mexico are going to see devastation as well. And I don't want to alarm anyone anymore. But if Congress does not fix the subsidies to the Affordable Care Act, everyone else in this room that is fortunate to have health insurance, and you know if you benefit from one of those ACA subsidies, they go away at the end of September. That's the devastation that I've seen caused to healthcare access in America. And like I said, for me, if I could not have gotten to a place that could scan my head and take an image of it, I wouldn't be here today. I am terrified as to what this means for all of our brothers and sisters across our state and across America. That's why I've been so concerned with one action after another coming from this administration. We just celebrated the 60th anniversary of Social Security. And rather than committing time and resources with my colleagues, when they spent all this money to fixing Social Security, they just left that one on the wayside. So Medicare and Social Security are now right in front of us, even though my colleagues said they would never, ever do anything to harm it. I'm very concerned. So that's why I opposed this bill. I didn't see it doing any good for us here in New Mexico. I saw it doing harm that I don't know that it can be reversed in the short term, but I've introduced legislation to undo every cut to health care with a few of my colleagues in the Senate. I'll argue that this will become the framework when we are given the opportunity or earn the opportunity from the American people to reverse those healthcare cuts. I've also led those initiatives to stop those cuts to the food programs, and I'll continue to do that as a proud member on the Finance Committee and the Agriculture Committee as well. So there's a lot to talk about tonight, everyone. I look forward to the conversation. Let's get through this for the next hour or so, some questions, some back and forth. Let's please be respectful to each other. And then we'll be able to chat a little bit more maybe after that. But I just want to be respectful of all your time. Thank you all for caring to come tonight. And everyone that's viewing, I think we're also streaming this as well. So everyone at home, thanks for letting us chat with you wherever you may be as well. And look forward to more conversations, everyone. It's an honor to be one of your United States senators. Thanks for being here tonight. Desiree, are you going to be doing some of the tickets and whatnot? Let's turn it over to you.
All right, so how the senator is going to be taking questions tonight is going to be through the raffle tickets that you received. So how this will work is Desiree is going to pull 3 tickets at a time. She will read the last 4 numbers of that ticket. If your ticket number is called, we ask that you stand up and come to this aisle here. If you're on that other side, please go to that aisle. And if you have mobility issues and are unable to get out from your seat, please raise your hand and Buddy here will come to you.
And if you didn't get a ticket,
so if you did not get a ticket, we do ask that you raise your hand. If you did not get a raffle ticket, good job, team. So if you did not get a raffle ticket, all right, looks like we have raffle tickets. So we will go ahead and get this started.
Okay. The first number, 0115. The next one, 0104.
right here, this gentleman in the gray, that's number 2. Number 3.
0510.
There we go, number 3. All right, buddy, let's go. So I'm gonna hold him in.
Yeah. Ready? Hi, Senator Lujan. Thanks for being with us this evening. I wish this audience would give you a round of applause right now for what you did for the downwinders. It was that was a long, hard fight. And no, no, but thank you. My question for you this evening is, if Democrats get back in power in the Senate and elsewhere in government, are there plans being made at this time to prevent this type of thing from happening again, as what the Trump administration has been doing throughout the last months that he's been in office? I don't want things to be fixed so that Democrats get something and Republicans don't. I want to see things equal. And I'd like to know if there's any talk at this point.
So one of the concerns that I have, which may be similar to the question, is there have been a lot of actions that have been taken by this president that have been challenged in court, and the courts have said that they're illegal. So arguably the law is clear. One of those, as an example, is there's a gentleman by the name of Russ Vogt. He oversees something called the Office of Management and Budget. And this is the entity that makes decisions on how the dollars will be invested across America, taxpayer dollars, your money. Well, the Constitution is clear. The legislative branch of government has to have that debate voted up or down, to make a determination on where dollars will be invested or not. Revenue, whether it's a tax or it's a credit or it's an investment with the dollar. The executive branch, if they don't like the program, there's something called the rescission where the president can just, they make a list, they send it back to Congress, and then Congress votes it up or down. As a matter of fact, my Republican colleagues just passed one of those rescission packages. So there's a legal path forward as prescribed through the rules and laws to do those things. The problem is there's something called impoundments. The Supreme Court of America has ruled on this over and over and said that they are illegal, plain and simple. Now, this person that the president has appointed to oversee the Office of Management and Budget said he doesn't care what the Supreme Court says. Now, I'm paraphrasing. He said, it does not matter what the Supreme Court says. I think that's a direct quote. And it does not matter to him what Congress does, whether it's Republicans or Democrats. And he believes that Republicans should not be working with Democrats. But even if they don't, if they move some of these appropriation bills, he believes that it should be up to the executive branch to determine where dollars go on that person's own decision-making. Even though the Supreme Court has ruled on this time and time again and said no. It's against the law. The law's already in place. The problem right now is that we don't have an independent Department of Justice who is supposed to be the top cop in America to enforce these rules regardless of who's making the decision. If the Supreme Court says you're out of bounds as the top court in America, it's out of bounds until it's corrected by law. I don't know what it's going to take when this president just chooses to ignore what the Supreme Court says and the Department of Justice does not want to enforce. That's a whole other question as well in that particular area. Now, arguably, based on all of that electoral analysis that has been taking place during the last few months across America, there's a lot of chatter in Texas with the Governor Abbott saying he's going to redistrict, arguably doing something the president has asked for, which is saying, I want more Republican districts. Well, as we all know, redistricting takes place every 10 years in America based on census numbers, and House of Representatives, those lines are redrawn based on representation of the American people. Again, what the law says. What Governor Abbott decided to do, even though they just drew maps again 3 years ago because they were challenged the first time, he said he can five more Republican districts. So he's not hiding from the fact that he's going to redraw these lines for partisan advantage. Whether you're a Democrat, you're a Republican, an independent, libertarian, this is wrong. The governor's going to determine who's going to represent someone, and he's telling them it doesn't matter who you vote for or how you want to vote. I'm going to tell you who your person's going to be. Now, in California, Governor Newsom has said he's going to do some stuff, and they're looking at it as well. I think this should be up to the American people. We should have these fair districts and fair fair districts across the country. They should be competitive, and people should show up and earn votes of the American people. It should be that simple. Now, with that being said, based on the maps, the way they're drawn, even with what Governor Abbott is doing in Texas, I believe the math is very clear. There are enough seats, regardless of what Gavin Newsom does, the governor of California, in Orange County, California alone, New York, one in Nebraska, and a couple here and there, that I believe the majorities in the House will flip. That's just the math. That restores checks and balances, at least with one of the legislative branches as well. That arguably stops a lot of this nonsense where the executive branch is just operating on their own without what our founders envisioned when they came up with this idea and this young republic, this young democracy based on the Constitution, that no one person gets to call the shots. We're going to have balance, executive branch, legislative branch. Executive, what did I leave out? Judiciary, sorry. Judiciary, legislative, executive. But he's testing it. And so, look, I certainly hope that some of my Republican colleagues that recently spoke up, for example, against the executive branch's decision to zero out the National Institutes of Health. 14 of my Republican colleagues got together in the Senate, they pushed back against him, and he reversed it. A few of my Republican colleagues, after they voted for this ugly bill, they said that they shouldn't have voted for it, and they've introduced legislation to reverse some of these provisions. I'm hoping that we can work together in some of these areas to reverse some of the damage that has been done in these spaces. Now, one of the problems with the executive branch is the lack of ethics requirements, like the Supreme Court. If you can believe this, executive branch does not have to follow the same ethics that we have to follow in the legislative branch. It makes zero sense. The same ethics that apply in one should apply across the way. And so that's something that we should be very clear about. And regardless of who the president is, Democrat, Republican, to your point, they should have to follow those same rules and those same laws. And so it's along those lines that many conversations are taking place. I'll argue that many of my Republican colleagues are also having these conversations, just not in public. They're saying it in private. It's better than them being silent. So I'm still hopeful that we can come together and get some folks together to do the right thing. Yeah.
What are we here?
Yes, sir.
Hey, Senator Long, thank you for
Sir.
coming.
Yes, sir.
Hey, I don't know if I can have a sidebar with you after this or not. Is that possible?
Yes, sir.
So I'm also from northern New Mexico. I grew up in Pecos. Good friends with Javier Gonzalez, may he rest in peace. So anyway, I have an issue regarding an uncle of mine who served in World War II and passed away, and I was hoping, well, he died in World War II, was a Silver Star recipient, Purple Heart recipient. I served 33 years in the military, spent several combat deployments in the Middle East. Anyway, he's buried here at Fort Bliss, and I'd like to get him buried in Santa Fe because he's got 4 siblings buried at the Santa Fe National Cemetery and 3 brother-in-laws. And that's where I'm hoping I can get buried too when I pass away. Anyway, I'd like to have a sidebar with you because I talked to Renee about that. But another question that I have is, here in New Mexico, we're last in everything. We're last in education, we're last in poverty, we're last in child well-being, but we're first in crime. And the governor is sending, folks up to Rio Arriba County, your county, to help fight the crime that's going on over there. So what are we doing at your level to help fix these issues here in New Mexico?
Well, first, sir, thank you for your service. Javier was a mutually good friend as well, someone that I grew up with as well. And what I'd also like to ask is, so we have a couple of our staff here. I think Carmela's here and Brooke are here as well. But if we could even chat a little bit, and then let's make sure that we get a chance to chat afterwards on the first issue as well. Look, on the second issue, it's my understanding that it was local governments that also asked for the governor's support to do that, ultimately led to some of those decisions. Now, I was not in that room, and that was a state decision as well, but it's local government leaders working with the governor in that case to do some of those same things. When it comes to education, one of the things that I don't understand is some of you are familiar with the state's permanent fund. So this is our rainy day fund. New Mexico has right now the most solvent and I believe the largest per capita permanent fund of any state And it was created for two reasons: for education and to make sure that we didn't have poverty. Now, I understand my colleagues, as they look at this fund, they say we need to be thoughtful about how these dollars are going to be invested and look at them as we talk about a rainy day. Well, it's raining and we have challenges. And so as we look at the reforms required, we can look at what's happening in other states across the country. We can look at strong public education systems. We can look at those that are not doing well. And I would say that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Look at the 5 top states, the 10 top states. What's working in those areas, and how can we work here at home, and how can we make things better? You know, one of the things that's a challenge for us in New Mexico that we saw during COVID is because we're a big rural state, and you all know, you know, when you're putting a shovel into the ground, sometimes it takes a pick or sometimes it takes a jackhammer because it's hard to dig into our soil in some of our communities or to get up and down these mountains as well. So not having broadband, fast, affordable internet. We saw this during COVID. You know, many of us thought that, well, the students that were having a heck of a time, and we should all be aware of the damage that was done to kids during this time. Well, they need the internet to do homework during COVID. Yeah. And they need the internet to do homework all of the other time as well. Most of their homework, actually, they need to do some research or get those lesson plans, the interaction between parents, as you may know, with the educators, it's all on the internet. But in New Mexico, we're one of the worst states when it comes to connectivity in the country. And one of the other things this administration is trying to undo is, a few years ago, some of us got together and we passed a bipartisan, Democrats and Republicans coming together on infrastructure investment across America, roads, bridges, water, wastewater, which we need, but also connecting every community in America. The money was there. Right now, there's a review, is what they're calling it, at the Department of Commerce from this administration, where they're making it harder and harder to connect more folks. That's something that I believe can change and will help more students across the country, including here in New Mexico as well. But we can do things a lot better and look at states that have done this and try to replicate this as well. There's no reason that New Mexico does not have the strongest education system in the country. And I'm just going to point to one institution. Don't get mad at me here because it's not New Mexico State University. New Mexico Tech. This little bitty campus just north of us here in Socorro, New Mexico. That campus is always in the top 5 in America for institutions of higher learning. Always. As a matter of fact, for years, little New Mexico Tech was leading the Ivy League schools, Harvard, Yale, Brown, all of them, when it came to students that would go after a 4-year degree that would later go on to get a doctorate. Little bitty tech. So I find it hard to believe that in New Mexico, we cannot demand better and turn things around. And we actually have a model not far from here out at Tech. State does pretty good too. But I think we can lean in a lot more in these particular areas as well. And look, like I learned from my dad, my brother's an electrician, my grandfather's a carpenter. Not everyone's going to go to college. That's okay. My dad was an expert in temperature fluctuation with rare metals and the torque necessary to hold them together. An iron worker. My dad did stuff that PhDs couldn't do. Now, it cost him his life. But he was an expert. Small business, entrepreneurial leadership. Why don't we have entrepreneurial requirements and curriculum in high school as well? And I get we want to read, math, all the basics. But entrepreneurial curriculum, financial literacy, why aren't we doing that since elementary? The power of a dollar, the power of that responsibility, the power of spending. That coupled with entrepreneurial leadership, no matter what pursuit you decide to take as an iron worker, a small business owner, a PhD in a field, you can always lean back on that as well. And I think those are some of the changes that we could be making here in New Mexico. Last thing I'll say to all the educators in the room, years ago, I had conversations with several educators that were trying to get their hands on something called Khan Academy. This was an idea that came out of Stanford in Palo Alto, California, of a gentleman that had kids that was frustrated about the quality of education they were getting. So he brought experts together. He created, it's an app, it's all online, and it's advanced curriculum. All the way now, some college classes are using the Khan Academy as well for curriculum in those schools. Why isn't that in the classroom? It's arguably one of the best in America. Why don't we make that available to our teachers and to our students and to parents alike? So there's a lot of things that we can do in those particular areas. And now on crime. Look, at every level, we should be concerned when we're not safe. At every level. We should also study acute causes. What's contributing? What's happening? What's not happening? Talk about mental health. A big challenge in the homeless community is also mental health related. People are sick. Addiction is an illness. But in America, what do? We say, if you're sick, well, the only way for you to get help is to go to jail, because we're not going to fund these programs to get people healthy. It's more expensive to go to jail and get help than it is if we would just help people. In America, we wait until someone is really sick, and then we say, well, we're going to get a bed to try to get you better. In other parts of the world where they've been most successful in combating addiction and helping with mental health, they say, if you wait until you need to ask your question, how many beds do you have? You've lost the fight. How do you start much earlier? As soon as you can get that diagnosis. And by the way, the stigma of mental health in America, we got to do something about this. How many of you had a cup of coffee this morning? We needed that caffeine to get a little kick in the morning. I would argue that's mental health. And I would argue every one of us that raised our hand should consider chatting with someone. If you couldn't sleep last night and that caffeine helped to get you moving a little bit, think about why you're not sleeping. You know what contributed to me having a stroke? Not sleeping very much. Sleep matters. The way that we provide care in America, wealthiest country in the world, one of the worst of the developed world with health outcomes. Some people are getting very rich off of this stuff, but people aren't getting better. Look, one of the classes I took in college with psychology, they taught us about a guy named Maslow. And they said, look, you're going to try to find food, you're going to try to find some water, and you're going to find shelter. And you're going to do everything you can till you can get that done. So what happens if you have an emergency in your life that's $250, $500, the transmission in your car goes out, you can't get to work, you're a single parent, you're renting, you lose income that week, and then you hurt yourself trying to work on that transmission. You lose your home, you lose your car, you lose your job. Now you hurt yourself, and you don't have enough money to go see a doctor if you don't have coverage. What happens? Now, I'm not saying that's all the root cause. We should be doing a lot more. We should be supporting law enforcement as well. Federally, I support the burn justice grants. I think we could be doing a lot more and looking at modernizing and be smart in this space. In some of the cities across New Mexico and across America, they're now even using drones to be able to get to scenes sooner to keep law enforcement safer and be able to collect evidence as an example. It's not good just for the people on the street, every one of us, or for someone to make a case as to what may have happened or wrongfully accused, but it also helps our law enforcement be smarter. I was with the sheriff yesterday, and he asked me for support to be able to get his deputies non-lethal tools. Because if they're having something going on, they said, we don't always need to pull out a firearm and shoot. If we had non-lethal solutions, then we could detain someone and maybe help them. So I think there's smarter ways for us to do things in the country as opposed to just, you're on one side, I'm on another side, or whatever it may be, that we could have all those tools and all those resources. But I think it's a bigger issue. It's a large issue. And when things get complicated, people sometimes just don't want to talk about it. We need to demand that more is done in all of these spaces. Border security. This president tries to say that if you're a Democrat, you don't support border security. Baloney. I've been advocating, I don't know, is Sochi here? No? I worked with former Congresswoman Sochi Torres Small on a piece of legislation that would require 100% screening of inbound and outbound traffic on the southern border. A pilot project is now in Santa Teresa because of that effort. This administration now gave themselves $150 billion for border security, but they're not making investments with any infrastructure when it comes to technology. The fentanyl coming into America under President Trump's Department of Homeland Security and Biden both said that 90% of the fentanyl coming into the United States is coming into America in passenger vehicles on the southern border being driven by young women because they're less likely to be targeted by Border Patrol. Nothing against Border Patrol agents. That's a fact, though. So why don't we require 100% screening of a non-invasive technology where you can just drive through it, not have to get out of your car? We're not going to slow down commerce, but we're going to see every anomaly in that car. And I would argue outbound as well, because we need to stop the drug or the guns and the cash and the bullets that are also leaving America as well. That sounds like border security. If we're randomly looking at stuff, how do we know if anything bad is coming into the country? I've gone so far as to say it's not just the southern border, it's the northern border as well. And it's the ports where the water, where everyone comes in on ships. There was precursor chemicals that were stolen out of Long Beach in the last year, because when those cargo ships roll in, they take the cargo containers off the ship, they put them on trucks, the trucks have to drive to an inland inspection center, and then they look at them at the inland inspection center, then they get put on more trucks and they go wherever they're going. Well, from the time that it got off the ship and it was traveling to the inspection center, some bad people intercepted it, stole precursor chemicals to fentanyl, drove it to Mexico, and guess what came back? There's a better and a smarter way for us to do all of these things. It takes investment, it takes dollars. I would argue they exist right now, and we should be working instead of making this a partisan thing. The last time there was a bipartisan border security piece of legislation, President Trump, as candidate Trump, after it passed the US Senate, went to his social media feed and told the House Republicans vote it down, even though they were going to vote to pass it hours before they were going to do it. It's not about the policy, it's about the politics. And we should question this stuff whenever it's coming from one way or the other to get to the bottom of it. Thank you for those important questions, sir.
Thank you for being here. My question also has to do with law and order and security and safety. What are you doing to stop masked, unidentified people in ICE hats from kidnapping hardworking people?
You know, this question came up at a town hall recently in Wisconsin, as some of you may know. And the gentleman that asked the question was a very conservative individual, think libertarian, self-defined. And he said, I'm not okay with the federal government showing up without identifying themselves to my house or to me on the street in an unmarked car and masked up where we don't know who they are. And by the way, we don't want them doing it on the internet or anywhere else with Pfizer or all this other stuff. I think that captures what we're seeing happening right now. And whether it's at a church or a school or someone is being told you need to go to a hearing to face a judge. And it happened at a Walmart in Albuquerque recently. Someone was there, I think, buying deodorant. And this is what they meant. Look, if President Trump wants to go after violent criminals, I support that. Whether you're documented or undocumented. Violent criminals, let's go after them. That's not what's happening right now. And under the guise of what Stephen Miller, who is one of the folks under this president that is doing this stuff, we're seeing it get worse and worse and worse. I'm very concerned about that. Border security and fixing a broken immigration system in America is something that we absolutely have to do. But what this administration is doing, especially with that vote that I just shared, when it was President Trump himself that took down what would have been one of the strongest border security initiatives in America because he wanted to have it as a campaign issue. It goes to show you what's going on in all these spaces. So what have I been doing? I've been working with several of my colleagues. Alex Padilla, who is the ranking member on the subcommittee, oversees immigration policy on the Judiciary Committee, has been leading the initiative with Dick Durbin out of Illinois as well. And we've been challenging posture from this administration, looking at funding into this administration. Some of us have signed on to amicus briefs. I can share those with you as well, looking at what's happening here. But I'm telling you, it's not just folks whose philosophical beliefs politically are on the left that are raising these questions. I've been asked by Republicans, I've been asked by folks that have told me they supported this president, what's happening in this particular space as well. There's a growing concern across the country and New Mexico with the actions coming out of this administration, whether those that are legal and those that are not legal as well. So thank you so very much for that important question. Yes, ma'am.
So Senator, I'm the bad guy. I'm going to be the bad guy. We're about 10 minutes
Okay.
out. And so we need time for 3 more tickets. 3 more tickets.
You can ignore him. Let's get some, if you all have a little bit of time, if y'all have a little bit of time, let's take some more questions. Yes.
Okay, the next 3 questions.
Okay. 0554.
You could,
Here, number
you
one.
could stay right there.
Okay.
You could stay right there. Yeah.
Okay, the next one, 0518.
Oh, front row, look at this.
Making it easy.
0379.
Okay, one more call, 0379. One more time.
0379. Okay, I'll try again.
Okay, one more check. I didn't see anyone leave.
0543.
0543. Oh, come on now, 2 of you didn't leave.
0543.
Okay, one more.
Okay. 0378. Okay.
You can just come
Oh,
to
very
the
good.
aisle over here. Yep.
Okay.
Okay, let's get it going.
So Senator Lujan, I would like to ask you, what is the likelihood that as the 2026 election approaches, that the president might declare martial law and that there would be no election?
Look, I'm concerned from actions taken by this administration, and I have faith in the American people. While I don't know who in the administration would stand up if something this horrific would happen in America and invoke the rules necessary, I still have faith in my colleagues legislatively. Suspending elections in America destroys our democracy, destroys our republic, destroys our Constitution. Now, with all that being said, there was a book authored 3-4 years ago called How Democracies Die. And some of you may have read it, maybe not. What it does is it describes how other democracies around the world have fallen. And then it talks about America, but it does not make a conclusion. Eliminating trust with the media, with the American people, is something that has happened when other democracies die. Overturning and firing general after general within a military and hiring loyalists is something else that's contributed to this. Eliminating whatever the judiciary is, whether it's the courts or Department of Justice equivalent in other parts of the world, has also been a part of it. The president, some of you may have read this weekend, said that he was going to sign an executive order to make voting by mail illegal in America. He was also going to do something about machine voting. Well, in New Mexico, we already have a balloted machine. Republicans years ago pushed back against requiring a balloted machine, so you had a receipt of how you voted. So I'm very concerned when any of my colleagues push back against the voting rights, and arguably pieces of the Voting Rights Act have already been gutted by this Supreme Court. It's why several of us have tried to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. I've also authored an independent piece of legislation for the Native American Voting Rights Act that I worked with tribal voting advocates, so that the reason we paired them separately so we could also protect sovereignty as we're working, but they run parallel with one another, because there's already actions in many states where they were making it harder for those living on sovereign nations, tribal communities, to get to a ballot box. Some states would require voting or ID to vote, but they wouldn't recognize tribal ID as an example. It was just one impediment after another. So I'm concerned about all of those things. Now, with all that being said, I still have faith in the American people. I have faith in our process. I can't imagine that even my Republican colleagues that I serve with would allow something like that to happen in America. Now, I hope I'm wrong. I hope we never see this. I hope we don't even have to think about it, but we're talking about it. And so as I study the rest of the world, I study those areas where similar actions to those that may have been happening over the last 10 months or so, 9 months in America, also contributed to some of that fallout as well. Yeah.
We're right here.
Sounds good.
Good evening, Senator
Good evening,
Lujan.
sir.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for all your hard work.
Sir.
You spoke earlier about education in general, some of the things that we're lacking in the state of New Mexico. And people, we statistics say we're dead last. One of the things that I believe New Mexico is doing a good job at is early childhood education, and I'm here advocating for that itself. More so than a question, I wanted to see if you can hear me out on something. I wrote it down. So I'm writing to you on behalf of New Mexico Children Learning Center and the families that we serve in Sunland Park, from the city of Sunland Park, to share the urgent and deeply concerning situation that is currently unfolding in our community. For the past 5 years, New Mexico Children First has partnered with La Clínica de la Familia through a grant slotted through the Early Head Start to serve 48 families in our area. These slots have been a lifeline for some of our most vulnerable families, ensuring that young children receive developmental support and early education. Unfortunately, La Clínica de la Familia has recently made the decision to withdraw from the partnership and relocate the 48 slots, stating that there was a higher need in the city of Las Cruces, therefore leaving those 48 families displaced. While we respect the organization's decision, the impact of the families in Sunland Park already facing high levels of poverty, limited access to childcare, and significant barriers to opportunity are now being left without essential services. Even more troubling, we're only given 30 days notice to inform our families of the change. This has created a state of panic for many parents who depend on the services to work, study, and support efforts for their families. Despite our efforts to find solutions, we do not currently have resources to fill the sudden and critical gap. We believe the Office of a Head Start might not even be aware of what's going on. So the situation is to remove these slots disproportionately harms the community. Therefore, we respectfully request your assistance in connecting us with the Office of Head Start so that they may review the matter directly. We support and we can ensure together the Sunland Park children and families are not left behind. Thank you for your leadership and for your continued commitment to the well-being of New Mexico families. We deeply appreciate your support and can provide any help and advocate for the children and families of Southern New Mexico.
Oh, thank you. Anna, let's make sure we connect, and Melanie, Renee, let's have this conversation, see what we can do to reverse this. I know it's not a question. So I'm one of only 2 United States senators who went to Head Start. I thought everyone went to Head Start. I didn't know you had to be poor to qualify, man. One of the areas, though, that the American people also, I talked about NIH earlier. One of the areas that the American people also stood together to reverse a devastating cut from this administration was on Head Start. And it was leaders that out of the southern states that were able to get Republican colleagues to speak up and to sound off when you know better than most when payroll was in question for all of these Head Start programs across the country, because it was one night to the next that this disappeared. And the way that Head Start programs across the country found out about these cuts is they went to do the drawdown to make payroll, and they were shut out. There was no money. Now, the administration said they were reviewing it. Well, it's been restored. So let's look to see what we can do here as well. And I mean, my team knows, look, if I was fortunate to benefit from something in life, everyone else should too, man. And Head Start got me to the United States Senate. And so let's see what we can do in this space, whether it's working with the county, philanthropy, the city, the state, and also the feds where the funding should be, but let's try to figure this out. Yeah. And you know Melanie and Renee? Yeah, and then my state director on is back there as well. They're in the back there. Yeah, so let's make sure we connect as well. Okay, yeah. Yes, sir.
Hello, Senator. Thank you for being here this evening.
Yes, sir.
I had the privilege of getting a chance to see you speak this Saturday morning, or last Saturday morning at the Veterans Breakfast.
Oh.
You brought a speaker. I want to first of all reiterate his words about veterans programs in the VA, especially 988.
Yes, sir.
It's something that is there and has saved a lot of people, myself included. The two parts of the questions are, as we know, there's been a lot of other cuts to the VA and other programs supporting DoD current members and retired and separated members. As we know, when you make cuts to or government programs in general, there's a long burn-in period before the ramifications of those cuts come to fruition, whether they're negative or positive. In this case, I think they're going to be quite negative. So the first part of the question is, what are we doing and what can we do to mitigate those things? The veterans I speak to, the folks that are active duty know that's coming. We're already seeing situations on Holloman Air Force Base with some of the contracts being cut. They did a PCS hold, I believe, for the Air Force. So the permanent change of station movement cycles are going to change. And that's going to affect, housing and people buying stuff and planning for their families and education and jobs and all that stuff. So that's the first half. What are we going to do about that? The other part is you talked about preventative health care when it comes to, in general. There is, as everyone knows, a huge stigma, negative stigma with mental health and seeking mental health, but also PTSD, especially for veterans. I've personally experienced it on numerous occasions. Matter of fact, some of the reasons I had to reach out to 988, where you're automatically perceived as violent if you're a veteran or somebody that served in a combat role. It's getting to the point here in New Mexico, and I'm going into details outside of here if you want, where my civil rights are being attacked. I'm not allowed to participate in political events. I was able to come here. I'm not allowed to participate in other ones because of no legal basis other than I was a veteran that served in a combat role. I know I'm not the only one that happens to. So my other question is, what can we do here in New Mexico and on a larger scale nationwide to start removing that stigma in a way, or at least not let it be used in an official setting where it takes somebody's civil rights away? Obviously, if somebody does exhibit threatening or dangerous behavior, I do believe in having limits, obviously, but not stuff that's set up like that.
Yeah. Well, let's start with the latter, man. This is how we start. We're having a conversation. Like, if, I'd like to learn what other groups or whatever other stuff's happened where they're saying not to come or whatever. Let's talk about that. That's wrong. Let's chat about that, and so we can figure that other piece out. Hey, where's Brooke at? Brooke, how many veterans were supposed to were on the list to be terminated by the Veteran Affairs Department? Was it 80,000? 80,000. So, well, you all know 3 in 10 federal employees have served our country. They're veterans. So when Elon Musk was up to all the stuff that he was doing and all the people that he said he canned, 3 in 10 served our country. And by the way, everyone that was terminated from Doge and what Elon did, that they were under probation. That means they were under a review period. Most of them were promoted. So you fired those that were identified as the best of the best that you were giving other responsibilities to and said, nope, we're getting rid of them too. By the way, you all remember that there was something, what was it, foot disease with some of the cattle. There was a concern of that disease coming into New Mexico and Texas, Arizona out of Mexico. Some of the people that got fired by by Elon Musk and the Doge folks were the epidemiologists that work at the United States Department of Agriculture that are the ones that are supposed to keep us safe. They fired the folks at the NNSA, nuclear weapons. Let's get rid of them too. It's ridiculous. So that's what we saw. But I'll tell you what, because of efforts by many of my colleagues, including myself, when we got wind that the Secretary of the VA was slated to fire 80,000, not employees, all veterans, through the VA, arguably making it even harder to get an appointment, to see someone, to talk to someone, whatever it may be. Because of efforts by Congress, we stopped him in his tracks. Now, he said he's not going to do it. Now, when we've offered amendments to say you're not going to do it, my Republican colleagues unfortunately vote on a partisan line and don't vote with us to prevent this. But that's one piece of legislation and an amendment that we will continue to offer until we get everyone on the record to prevent that from happening as well. And also to ensure that the VA is going to be properly staffed. Because what they did at the Social Security Administration was what they were trying to do at the VA. Because some of President Trump's appointees have been caught saying out loud what they should have been saying quietly. Privatize the VA so someone can make a buck. Secretary of Treasury, was he the last one? Secretary of Treasury was the one recently that said that they should privatize Social Security. Remember when they tried all that under George W. Bush? So the guy that is now the Secretary of Treasury was caught on a mic telling someone that he was doing an interview with that they should do this. Well, the guy that's overseeing the Department of Commerce has already said similar stuff, and he's the one that might take over for this guy if he goes on to the Fed, because the president wants to get rid of this other guy that is the independent office at the Fed and replace him with the Secretary of Treasury and move the guy from the Department of Commerce over that way. This is what they've been saying. This is one of the challenges when you have a bunch of billionaires that are now in the room calling shots and they're trying to figure out how to make another buck. That should concern all of us, whether you supported this president or not. This is not right in America when folks are being put into positions only to profit for themselves and to heck with everyone else. It's not right. So let's make sure we connect and we chat as well. Let's see what else we can do in this space as well. And thanks for being up north, man. Yeah, good to see you.
So Senator, we're at time. And I just want to be respectful to the employees of the school and our officers that are here, so.
Officers, are you cool? Oh, man, I don't want to put you on the spot. What would 20 minutes more mean for schedules and family? Anna, are you cool with that? Another 20? Okay, let's take another 3 questions if you're all okay with. If you need to leave, please get to your responsibilities, get to your family, do what you need to do as well. But if not, let's try to get 3 more. And then, are you okay? 20 more minutes? We could just pull aside. Okay, very good, sir.
All righty,
Let's-
Desiree, go on.
I still have water, so we're good.
You're the boss, you're the boss.
Okay. 0100.
0100. Okay, call the next one.
0517.
0517, right here. Okay, second one.
0295. 0595.
0595. Okay, next one.
010.
Oh, wait, we have 0595. Okay,
Oh,
keep going.
okay. 0106.
Okay, there's 2. Ms. Flores.
Okay. 0322.
Last one of the night, 0322. Okay, one more.
0379.
0379. Oh, come on now.
0379.
Next one.
No? Okay. 0031.
Okay, there we go. We have 3. Very good.
All right, let's,
And then, because we thought we had yours, you get one too, okay? Yeah.
I will hold them.
Thank you. Hi, how are you?
Hi, good to see you, Laura.
I came to make a comment to you. Governor Richardson told me about 4 years ago, maybe, when you flipped the 40 seats and you were head of the DCCC, that you were the architect for that.
Mm.
And I'm here to tell you that as a Democrat, we need you, sir.
I appreciate that.
Let's go.
I appreciate that. Look, you know what, we can just go from right here. What Laura is referring to is, you know, back in 2016, when the president was elected, there was an effort to restore checks and balances to the legislative branch, and I was entrusted with the responsibility to be part of that, and we were fortunate because we earned the trust back of the American people, plain and simple. And in parts of the country where that trust has been lost, we need to show back up and talk to folks and figure out what's happening in their lives and earn that trust back. There's too much going on. And if Democrats are fortunate to earn the majorities back in the Senate and in the House and get the White House someday, then something better be done to make things better for the American people as well, Laura. Because we've got to make sure we're delivering. I would say reversing that tax policy, helping middle class, people trying to get a middle class, get that support. Medicare, look, I'm all about finding savings in Medicare, but let's reinvest it back into Medicare. When Medicare was first talked about, many of you are familiar with this, it was not just supposed to be health insurance, health coverage, as strange as this is going to sound. It was supposed to include vision, hearing, and dental care. That's also health care. It does not take a lot of money to find the savings and the efficiencies and put it back in and provide total care. Anyone here that has ever had a dental challenge know how devastating that can be if you don't catch it soon enough. There's some little things that need to be done. Mental health, the work that we're talking about here. I mean, there's serious things that we can do in the country, and we can do it in a fiscally responsible way. There's ways that you can do this and you can pay for it as you go along as well. So I appreciate that very much, Laura. I know we can do it. Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Flores?
Okay. Thank you for being here, Senator, and thank you for supporting my daughter in DC, Andrea.
Yes.
Anyway, what I want to ask you is, how as citizens here in Las Cruces, how can we help? What can we do? What works best? Is it calling people in Washington, DC, or is it writing letters? Or what can we do? How can we be better citizens to make sure we have an election?
Yes. All of that, Ms. Flores, the calls matter, the letters matter, the emails matter. Whether you support or oppose what the New Mexico federal delegation is doing, weigh in with us because we represent you. If you're concerned about what's happening in another state, rather than just making a phone call to that senator as an example, or writing them a letter, if you know someone from that state, I'd encourage you to ask them to reach out as well. Because when you're a constituent reaching out to an office, that is listened to and paid attention to at a much greater degree. So I would say that. And look, a former president that I respect very much said, one of the most important responsibilities we have is to be an active citizen. And paying attention to all that is going on, speaking up, showing up matters so very much. Protest is good, but peaceful protest. This president is looking for an excuse, as we've seen in so many parts of the country. Peaceful protest is what we need to be able to see here as well. And I would say, look, if you don't like what's going on as well, and you don't like the folks that are doing it, then why aren't you running for office? We need good people serving the American people, serving people here in New Mexico at every level: school board, county commission, governor, Senate, whatever it may be, president. And so, see, Ms. Flores just put me in my place. 13 years on the school board. But I would say those are the things that we need to be doing, just being active, being involved. And look, just because one of us says something, don't just take it for fact. Look into it. Fact check all of us. Make sure people are telling the truth. Make sure that people are keeping their word when they say they're going to do something as well. Those are things that we can do as active citizens as well. Thank you for that important question.
So she just stole my question. Thank you. That's great. So I will just close with a comment. Thank you very much. You are serving in a position that has to be maybe more difficult right now than it's been in many, many, many years in this country. And I very deeply appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Look, thank you. Thank you. Look, I was almost going to close. We have one more.
So first off, Senator Lujan, I just want to thank you for everything you're doing for our youth and for our community. We genuinely appreciate it. We've been keeping track of everything. And then secondly, I have a question. And then the girls had a gift they brought for you. So you guys.
Oh, thank you. Oh, look at this bookmark.
And so,
This is phenomenal. Thank you.
my question was, is there any proposed legislation right now to prevent a felon from becoming a US president moving forward?
Yes. Yes. Look, I think that one speaks for itself. So the answer is yes, there is legislation that's been offered. And it wasn't offered recently. This is from years ago. And it should be very simple. I'll just leave it at that. But the answer is yes. I think it's Jeff Merkley. Carlos, does that sound right? I think Senator Jeff Merkley of Oregon is the one that, it's either him or Tim Kaine. I'm confusing the two. It might be Tim, because Tim has the ethics legislation for the executive branch as well. He's going to look it up for me. But it's either Jeff Merkley or Tim Kaine. I think it's U.S. Senator Tim Kaine out of Virginia that has authored that piece of legislation. Yeah. We've not been able to get a vote yet. And so oddly enough, after President Biden was elected, a few of our Republican colleagues talked to the author, I think it's Tim, and said that they'd be willing to join him. But then after the election of this one, they've all dropped off. So look, with some of these pieces of legislation like this one is, well, if my Republican colleagues don't want to offend this president, then let's say the next president. Everyone should be okay with that. No one knows who it's going to be. So look, I'll close with this. I've been clear with my colleagues, Democrats, Republicans in the House and the Senate, a few governors that I've had a chance to work with as well. I've been abundantly clear that I'm willing to work with anyone when it comes to making a positive difference for New Mexico and for people here at home. Now, if you're going to do something that's going to hurt our state or hurt our people, game on, bring it, because we're not going to let you do it. And I'm learning the rules every day as to where we can stand, how we can get in the way of stuff. By the way that RICA got adopted was learning those procedural rules and standing up to some of this nonsense. Callie's not here with me. She's part of our staff. 2 a.m, there was one of my colleagues that was up to no good, and we caught what he was doing between 1 and 2 a.m. And as a result of that, we were able to make progress, and it took a few years, but we got it done. There's a ways to smell this stuff out and to call it out as well. With all that's happening across the country, across New Mexico, within the VA, all of our veterans that are here, I always ask this question, is there anyone that believes the VA should be privatized? Raise your hand. In all the years that I've been asking that question, I've never seen a hand go up anywhere. That's one of the things that's happening right now with all this nonsense of the talk and trying to fire people and make folks come forward. It makes 0 sense. Why would we devastate access to healthcare, especially in rural communities across America? It makes 0 sense. The wealthiest country in the world, some of the lowest health outcomes that we've got in all developed nations. There's a better way to do it. And by the way, during COVID, didn't we figure out that if you get sick or you think you're sick, you should get checked? And if you're sick, you should get help? That sounds like preventative care to me. I mean, heck, if I would have gone to talk to one of these physicians before I had my stroke, instead of being hard-headed and thinking, oh, not sleeping's good, it means I'm stronger. I only need 3 hours a night. Burn the candle at both ends. Get more done. Someone saw fit to put me in my place and slow me down and make sure that I learned, but the hard way. There's a right way and a wrong way to do things. I'll close the way that I started on this little bitty farm. I talked about the lesson I learned from my dad and what you learn from cleaning a barn. My grandfather, my dad's dad, he was a sheep herder. He was a laborer as well. Once upon a time, he worked in the shipyards all the way out in San Pedro working on some of those ships. My dad was a union iron worker. My brother's IBW. My grandfather's a union carpenter. I come from a labor family. My grandfather I appreciate that, sir. My grandfather said, and my dad's dad, whether we're talking about the land, the water, the acequias, that little piece of farm that I still call home, tending to the sheep, the cows, the rooster that I hated, that I have a scar on the front of my leg because he took a piece out of it. That darn rooster, man. Not part of what my grandpa told me. My dad, when he was younger, he got diagnosed with an ulcer. On anyone here, I won't ask you to raise your hand. And so one of his buddies convinced him that the way you take care of that ulcer is you get goat's milk. So instead of finding someone that sold goat's milk, my dad bought a milking goat. Guess who had to milk the goat? And guess who had to milk the goat before school sometimes? And so on occasion, I was the smelly kid on the bus because she didn't cooperate with me and she would let loose and kick the pail over. Anyhow, growing up on a farm, you learn a lot of lessons. But my grandpa Celedon said, just leave things better than you found them. If you leave things better than you found them, it will get better. The golden rule, I think a bunch of us learned this in kindergarten. We just need to get back to some of those simple things, common sense, right and wrong when it comes to policy, the treatment of people. My father reminded me when I was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives, and he didn't see me get elected to the Senate. Excuse me. He said, behind every vote is a person. No matter how complex the policy. And that's what you're there to do. You can talk, you can do all these things, but in the end, you're empowered with a vote. And after you vote, you have to come home and explain it. Some people are going to agree with it, some people are not, but you have to explain it. So to everyone all across Doña Ana County and everywhere else that you may have traveled from to be here tonight, thank you for letting me be here tonight to explain my votes. It's an honor to serve you in the United States Senate.
The senator will be going to meet with the press for a few interviews and then he will be coming back out. So again, if you are having any issues as you're leaving, our staff is right out in the front and they'll be able to assist you. So.
And one more round of applause for President Torres, please, everybody. Thank you to you and the staff for letting us be here tonight.